Hi guys, it's Catherine. So today I'm going to make a video about the books I've enjoyed most so far in 2017, and I've seen quite a few other videos about this and I've really enjoyed watching them because a lot of the time they talk about books that weren't necessarily released recently or aren't on my radar at all, so hopefully this video does the same for you and you'll discover a couple of books that you've not necessarily heard a great deal about. The first one I want to talk about is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and his other novel 100 Years of Solitude is one of my absolute favourite novels ever, so I was really excited and a little bit apprehensive to read this one, but I'm really glad that it didn't disappoint. It's a really touching story of love, marriage and family set in Colombia, and it really muses on the ideas of idealism and disenchantment throughout. It's a really human novel. It's gorgeously written with really believable, flawed and fallible characters, and I would really recommend it as a place to start with Gabriel Garcia Marquez because it isn't as much of a time commitment as 100 Years of Solitude, but if you enjoyed this one then you'll absolutely love that as what I think is really the pinnacle of his literary achievement. The next one I want to talk about is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry, and I've actually made a separate video all about this because I loved it that much, so I'll link that below and I won't say too much about it here, but it was released last year and it was extremely popular, so you will probably have heard of it already. It's set in Victorian Essex, following the story of a recently widowed woman who is trying to uncover the secret behind the legend of the Essex Serpent, and it's so rich thematically, really delving into the discussions and debates surrounding religion and science at that time. It's also written in the most sumptuous way. Its style is definitely reminiscent of the time period in which it's set. It has real echoes of Dickens in it, but I don't want that to put anyone off because it's still very readable and it has a very compelling plot. The next one I want to talk about is It by Stephen King, which is a real time investment. It's an absolute doorstop of a novel, but it was really well worth my time, and it's actually the first Stephen King novel I've read, so I'm really glad that I enjoyed it so much, and it's absolutely inspired me to try and read more of his novels. Although it was long, it was well paced and never felt boring. It follows the story of a group of children who are being haunted and hunted by a shape-shifting monster, and the narrative is interspersed with episodes of them as adults returning to their hometown to finish what they started. It's one of the only novels I've read to be genuinely terrifying, and the way it builds suspense is really amazing, and the monster itself in all its forms is truly horrifying. Stephen King really explores the minds of children in this novel, their fears, their desires, and their vernacular in particular is captured with astonishing clarity, which makes it so realistic throughout, even when they're being chased by monsters. There's a film adaptation that's coming out in September, which looks really great actually. It stars Finn Wolfhard, which is one of the kids who was in Stranger Things, which itself is definitely inspired by it. So definitely keep an eye out for that as well. It looks really exciting. The next book is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I can't quite believe it's taken me until now to read this novel. It's such a classic, it's so well received, and I really enjoyed it. It's a dystopian novel telling the story of a handmaid called Wolfhard, who in a near-distant future lives in a society where fertility rates are extremely low, and fertile women like her are used as reproductive machines for men in a society that oppresses women to the extreme. I like that it didn't make men to seem like the ultimate evil antagonist while women are wholly benevolent, but it really explores the full range of human emotion, and although this oppression harms women greatly, it also results in emotionally stunted men, and I think it really does a good job of exploring that idea. This is an incredibly rich novel brimming with ideological concepts, but I like that it's always a little bit vague throughout, and the reader is kept guessing as to exactly what's happening, and there is a real parallel between the feeling of confusion and not quite understanding that the handmaids encounter as you do while reading the novel. This has become a classic in dystopian fiction, and it ranks alongside 1984 and Brave New World, and I think rightly so. It has a lot of really pertinent things to say about society that are ever more relevant nowadays. Next is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and Ishiguro has become one of my favourite authors actually over the last couple of years, and this is I think alongside Never Let Me Go, his best achievement. I think I like this novel so much because it opened my eyes to a way of seeing things that is totally different to how I normally would, and it's from a perspective of someone who is so different from myself, an English butler who has a very different idea of social etiquette and his role in society. It's a slow-moving and very introspective novel, as are all of Ishiguro's, but it is beautifully written and very thought-provoking. His novels are all really reflective, but none more so than this one, I think, because it's really a retrospective of the butler's life, looking at his decisions and his indecisions, his proud moments and his regrets, and it is just beautifully crafted. The last one I've got to talk about is the most recently published one and the one I read most recently, and it is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. And this one was nominated for the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction. It lost out to another great book, The Power by Naomi Alderman, but I heard a lot of great things about this one, so I wanted to pick it up as soon as I could. The plot is about a Nigerian woman whose husband takes a second wife after she fails to become pregnant after several years of marriage. It really explores in depth these ideas of marriage and motherhood, especially in a setting in 1980s Nigeria where there was a great deal of pressure on women to fall pregnant and go to extreme lengths to make sure that happened. This book was so full of soul, with emotional, realistic dialogue, sympathetic characters and a truly heartbreaking plot. I think that African authors are sadly very underrepresented, and I myself have read very few novels by African authors, so I really welcome this opportunity to read something that would not only be an enjoyable book, but would teach me something about a culture that I don't know a great deal about, but also have elements of womanhood and things that I recognise and I can sympathise with. This book's difficult to call enjoyable because it is really upsetting at some points to read, and it does really touch upon some of the world's greatest injustices, but I think it's a really important book and it's crafted with a great deal of skill, so I would absolutely recommend it. So those are the books that I've managed to whittle down to my favourites for this year so far. I'd like to know if you've read any of these ones, or what your favourites have been so far, because I'm always looking for recommendations. Anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!